Welcome into another edition of Daily Dozen Sports, the Tuesday edition this week. Still lots to talk about here as we're getting closer to that ever-looming football kickoff. Nick Teague joined alongside David Collier. Football may be all the rage, but we're going to start things off talking a little basketball as the class of 22 injunction still making its impact, and there's no bigger beneficiary than Texas Tech. We'll dive into that. And then from Salt Lake City, KTVX's Dana Greene will join to talk about BYU and Utah. Two of the programs looking to make a big impact in this upcoming season. And then we'll stay in the Rocky Mountains to talk Colorado, one of the most intriguing programs. Don't really know what to make of them yet. We'll dive into that. And then we'll end things out with a roundup of the ever-growing list of preseason football awards in the conference. But David, as I mentioned, to start things off, the class of 22 injunction, we've talked about it a little bit on this show. You know, Texas Tech not the only one. Houston getting a little bit of a benefit with Kendall Weaver. But again, the Red Raiders have been probably the biggest beneficiary, at least in the Big 12, as they've landed now their third signee. And it's a very familiar face here in Lubbock, as it's none other than Donovan Atwell coming back for a surprise repeat season in Lubbock.
Yeah, I think you could probably argue that probably the most additions in the country, at least how much they're going to affect this program with the depth and the experience they have in the red and black, right? I mean, Donovan Atwell, you just mentioned that. I mean, if he can repeat what he did last year, he's going to be one of the best three-point shooters in program history, not just in one season, but in the program's entire, being. So just to get that news, I mean, we saw it coming, but just to put the pen to the paper and add him to this list, I mean, when we started posting these preseason rankings like John Rothstein has done, about a month ago, Texas Tech wasn't in the top 45, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure I saw his top 10 come out on Tuesday morning, and the Red Raiders were 12th, maybe 13th.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, they jumped from not in the top 45 to top 15 in the country with all these additions. Atwell just the cherry on top to go with Darian Williams. And then, oh boy, are you going to be the one that attempts to say the 6'10", 19-year-old's name? Basala
Bagayoko?
There we go. That's what we'll go with. We'll call him BB. But a 6'10" freshman, more post presence to go with Jamichael Stillwell from UCF. If you looked at the starting five right now, and let's say JT Toppin didn't start, just because obviously he's coming off of that torn ACL. You've got Jamichael Stillwell at center, Darian Williams at one of the forward positions, and then Donovan Atwell, Cruz Davis, a transfer, and Dre Gibbs Lawhorn as your starting five right there. And that's not with JT Toppin having to watch as he prepares. And that doesn't even count the other additions that we've talked about, a 6'10" presence to help you out, a guy that had NBA aspirations before signing with Texas Tech. It's amazing the transformation. You could argue the team that they've signed since in the last month might be one of the better teams in the country, not even counting the roster that they had before that.
Exactly. And I think not even the transformation from the media around, but like the vibe around Lubbock or on social media from the Texas Tech fan base. Because, you ended the season in a disappointing way. A lot of what-ifs felt like you left a lot on the table with just that performance against Alabama. It just finally looked like the lack of JT Toppin caught up with the team. And then with losing Christian Anderson in the NBA draft, that felt like the first blow. And then the uncertainty with JT Toppin. And even though he was not a new addition, I feel like his announcement of he was going to play this year and he was willing to weather the storm is what kind of sparked this whole thing. Now, granted, there was other things. Obviously, these three players we talk about had to become eligible and this, that, and the third, but there were just a lot of open gaps on the roster, and everyone is like, what is Grant McCasland doing? Why is he not filling these, places? There's nobody coming through in the transfer portal. Is it panic mode? And again, basketball has kind of been the consistency ever since that Final Four run. They've had a few down seasons, but it's normally been tournament, and that's the sport that you can rely on here for Texas Tech, but it kind of seemed like the expectations were dropping, and here we are with three big moves. And again, I hate to focus on just Stillwell, Atwell, and Williams because, again, they've made a lot of other moves as well, but it seems like once you got that kind of triple-headed monster, the two former Red Raiders coming back, and then that big conference foe that you know of, as UCF gives Texas Tech a lot of problems in basketball. It seems like once you got all those pieces, the expectations just went through the roof. And again, here we are 2 weeks away from Texas Tech starting football season, a very highly anticipated season for the Red Raiders, which we can get into a little bit later. But we're talking about basketball, and basketball is the talk of the town. Again, it's kind of showing that even when it looks kind of the gloomiest for this program, they can kind of find a way to navigate their way back into it. And that's probably just because of the foundation that's been created ever since that 2010s turnaround under a plethora of coaches that's now being, kind of manifested by Grant McCasland.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I was necessarily ever worried during the offseason. Yes, when you look at the numbers, there wasn't much depth. But if you look at last year's basketball team, and you mentioned them faltering in the tournament against Alabama, but if you look at last year's team, they had absolutely no depth and no JT Toppin at the end, and they still were a really good basketball team. Now, maybe not to the extent that we were looking at about a month ago, or a little bit more than that now, but Grant McCasland's won everywhere he's been. So me being the eternal pessimist that I am was pretty optimistic about what Grant McCasland and this Texas Tech basketball team were going to do. And kudos to them. Now, it was kind of a gamble, right? They left open these spots, knowing that they needed to fill their roster, and maybe partially because they were hoping the 5-for-5 was passed. And once it did pass, obviously it turned out great for them. But I think they probably still would have found pieces, just not to the extent of the program record holder for single season three-pointers, and then the guy that just happened to have you on the cusp of making a Final Four a couple of years ago before transferring to NC State.
Yeah. No kidding. And again, when you have JT Toppin on the team, if he was healthy, I think that could have been a game changer in and of itself. So like you said, I don't know if it was Texas Tech is completely going to be bottom of the Big 12, but with these pieces you've added, you've kind of gone from we're going to be happy to make the tournament to I think we need to make a little bit of noise. And speaking of making a little bit of noise, two programs over in the football sphere that kind of burst onto the scene, you could say, in their kind of Big 12 not debut, but they're in their early years of the Big 12, BYU and Utah. They're looking to cement their status and kind of make a little bit more noise next season. And when we come back on Daily Dozen Sports, we'll get the latest on the Utes and the Cougars. We'll be right back.
Back on the Daily Dozen, and we head to the Beehive State. David Collier and Nick Teague here, joined by Dana Greene, as always, to talk all things BYU and Utah. And we'll start with the Cougars, Dana. And I guess the first question I have is probably not football-related. Well, it's football-related, but not on the field-related. Can you catch us up to whatever the beef is between Kalani Sitake and the athletic director that we've heard about the last couple of days?
Oh, you've opened Twitter recently.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I really think a lot is being made up about this that isn't really there. Shockingly, that happens with Twitter sometimes. Right. But it's no secret. Kalani Sitake has voiced his frustration with the amount of financial resources that's being divvied out to the football program. He signed that extension back in December that almost doubled his salary, $9 million a year he's making now, because Penn State came along and offered him upwards of $10 million a year. So BYU had to match that. And during that agreement, he was made certain promises by the new athletic director, Brian Santiago. And apparently, we don't know for sure what promises were made, but they haven't been lived up to as of now. So Sitake went on a podcast and discussed his frustrations. He did talk with the media about it last week, said he doesn't want any of the attention on him. He wants to deal with just the team, obviously, but he said he's always going to stick up for his team and try to get as many financial resources as I believe they deserve. I mean, this team has won 23 games the last 2 years. They just opened up as number 14 in the country, which is their second highest preseason ranking ever. So I think they deserve all the financial resources Kalani wants. And, we said it before, he's the dean of the Big 12 coaches now. It's hard to believe. He's about to begin his 11th season at BYU. He is the longest tenured head coach in the Big 12. I think he's deserved all that he can get. And some complaints were that Brian Santiago, the AT, came from a basketball background. He was a basketball player in college. And of course, he brought Kevin Young, AJ DeBonsa, brought all these big name talent to the basketball program. And I think Kalani's saying, hey, we need to even this out with the football program.
Yeah. And so, off the field issues, we're no stranger to that here in Lubbock, but we mentioned, we're getting closer to football season, maybe not the resources and everything there for Kalani Sitake, but for the players on the field in the season the Cougars are looking to have, what are kind of the takeaways here that you've seen from these early fall camps and practices for Sitake and the Cougars?
Well, they just had their first scrimmage on Saturday. We were able to see some highlights of it. We weren't able to attend the scrimmage, but from what we talked to the players and the coaches about, the offense seems a little ahead of the defense right now, and it's a really good defense. So that tells you how good the offense is performing in camp. Bear Bachmeier's knowledge of Aaron Roderick's system is just exponentially better at this time this year than it was last year. He has mastered this offense, and now they have a really solid offensive line. They have maybe the best tailback in the Big 12 in LJ Martin, a really good backup in Sione Moa. We talked to him today, and he's finally 100% healthy. So that's a 1-2 punch. And today at practice, Sione described them as a Reggie Bush, Lendale White combo. I don't know if we're going to get to that level, but that's what they're expecting out of the running game. The biggest question has been at receiver, and apparently these receivers played very well in the scrimmage. Guys like Kyler Casper, JoJo Phillips, and a freshman by the name of Legend Glasker. He's already living up to his name, I guess. He's a local high school product. He's the cousin of starting linebacker Isaiah Glasker. He has turned heads at camp. So I would think the defense would be ahead of the offense, but in that scrimmage, the offense got the better end of them.
Yeah, and so, Dana, lots to talk about with BYU, but of course, when you're talking about the state of Utah, there's two programs, and of course the flagship university of the program, no offense BYU, at least the one that bears the name, is Utah. And you mentioned before we came on air that you were just over at Utes practice. So what's kind of the vibe that we're getting from Utah as they look to make their debut under first-year head coach Morgan Scalley?
Well, they also had their first scrimmage on Saturday at Rice-Eccles Stadium, and apparently it was very evenly matched. Not one offense or defense got the better end of the other. They're really progressing at about the same rate, and a lot of people are discounting the Utes. I've seen some national prognosticators say they're going to take a step back this year. I guess that's coming from the switch from Kyle Whittingham to Morgan Scalley. I don't see it. I see Devin Dampier being just as effective with this offense under Kevin McGivern than he was under Jason Beck, who left with Whittingham to Michigan. We talked to some of the defensive players today, and they want to live up. They love the nickname Sack Lake City. They are always one of the leaders, not just in the conference, but in the nation in sacks. They had 34 last year, and they think they can top that this year. They lost a lot of that production, but some defensive names to keep an eye on. Lance Holtzclaw, he's in his second year with the Utes, a transfer from Washington. He may be the mayor of Sack Lake City, which goes to the guy with the most sacks. And he's really taken that responsibility, and he knows there's a lot of tradition of Utah defensive linemen getting double-digit sacks. He thinks he can be that guy. And I'm really impressed with the secondary. They have a guy, Nate Ritchie, a local product here at a Lone Peak High School. He's been hurt. This is his fifth year in the program. He's never had a full healthy year. He's very knowledgeable of the program, so he's 100% healthy. He's a safety. Him and Scooby Davis, another great name at the corner. They have some really good talent in the secondary. I think the defense that we concentrated on today is really keeping up with the offense, which I thought the offense would be ahead of the defense at this point.
All right, that's Dana Greene joining us from Salt Lake City. As always, Dana, we appreciate your time and look forward to talking to you again down the road here on Daily Dozen Sports.
We're getting closer to the season, guys. I cannot wait.
Thank goodness. All right, that's Dana Greene. After the break here on Daily Dozen Sports, we will talk more mountain sports. We'll go to Boulder to talk about the latest with the Colorado Buffaloes and look at all the watch lists that have been released when Daily Dozen Sports continues. Back for one final segment here on a Tuesday on Daily Dozen Sports. David Collier, Nick Teague, and we are talking a little bit of Colorado football in this segment. The Buffs, obviously a make-or-break season for head coach Deion Sanders there in Boulder. And, boy, the one thing you don't want to do is have some kind of off-the-field, noise, right? Whenever you're trying to head into a season where you need to win football games, but nevertheless, that is certainly the case in Boulder after an open practice, no less. Nick?
Yeah. So again, I think Colorado, whenever you have such a high profile figure in your department, whether it be, a coach, a player, somebody in the athletic staff, if they're running things, you're going to draw eyeballs. And, Deion Sanders, one of the most impressive, football players of his era, arguably of all time, he's headed up there. They could go, as we've seen, they could go 4-8 and they're still going to draw media attention. But as you said, I think they were trying to get away from that, and you have an open practice and just a lot of buzz coming out of Boulder when it comes to that. And again, there just always seems to be something, when Deion first got there, he had the pack your bags thing, which, might have not been the worst idea, as we saw how Colorado was before he got there, but they're kind of falling into that same element. You kind of have one season where were able to talk about football, and that was the Heisman campaign of Travis Hunter, and it seems since then it's just been Colorado in the news for all the wrong reasons, or at least not the on-the-field reasons when it comes up there. And again, it's a very pivotal season, but one that you're just not sure what to make of it yet. And I don't know if this latest stunt was, giving a lot of hope to the Buff faithful.
Yeah, and that stunt being essentially they had an open practice for fans and reporters, and they were permitted to attend, but phones were collected at the gate. No video, no photos, no recordings, or notes were allowed. Fans and reporters were instructed to not report anything they saw, including injuries, depth chart movement, personnel groupings, player performances, or scheme information. Now, a regular fan's not going to be rolling out scheme information, or anybody that works in any media partnership looking just for video from the football practice. But yeah, and it basically said in the memo to the media, if you think it's something you probably shouldn't report, don't.
Yeah, David, not quite making a lot of sense there. I understand from the fan element, but as you mentioned, I don't know how many fans are going to be breaking down the scheme chart or anything else to that nature, probably just want to see their team. But then for the media, and I'm not wanting to advocate against covering Colorado, especially if that's in your market, but it doesn't quite make sense if there's any incentive for them to go if there's nothing that they can talk about.
And if the only thing that you can talk about is not being able to talk about it, which inevitably turns into a negative story, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have any video or anything to play off of that you watched during said practice, then inevitably you're just going to do what we're doing right now and talk about the negative side of the entire thing and all of the off the field as opposed to the product they're working on, putting on the field.
And I guess
it's an opener.
You're trying to eliminate so much of the media noise by, I guess, not giving them anything that you're generating even more. Like, because I get that, because I think Deion would be like, well, they're going to come in here and just talk ill about us if they don't like what they see and da-da-da-da. And it's like, well, if they can't talk about anything they see, it's going to turn into what are they hiding or what do they not want us to talk about, and it's going to circle. And maybe in a weird way they like that, even if they say they don't. Like, because, again, it gets eyes on the program, and even if it's not, again, it keeps them – and it kind of, we talk about kind of roles and Texas Tech taking the villain role. Maybe Colorado wants they don't believe in us role, or we're the underdog role, or even though we have this, nobody believes in us. And maybe it's billboard material, and maybe Deion Sanders is just a genius and we're over here asking why, and it's going to turn out successful for Colorado. Who really knows? I guess that's kind of it's just very bizarre. And again, it seems like most of the time we're talking about Colorado, it's usually not to do with football, which isn't the best of things because they've shown that they can compete whenever they have a team put together. It's just not very often up there in Boulder, unfortunately.
We just won't know what they're putting on the football field until they take on Georgia Tech in the season opener, which, to be quite honest with you, I mean, to an extent, we had here in West Texas when it came to the quarterback situation, and Cliff Kingsbury back in the day said you'll find out who our starting quarterback is when they trot out on the field. So certainly not exclusive to Deion Sanders, but I think we did get to watch some of those practices back in the day in West Texas. Speaking of those practices in West Texas, we've seen plenty of Cam Dickey and the Red Raiders working their way to their season opener with Abilene Christian on September 5th. And We do this part at the end of Daily Dozen on a regular basis, and it's a look at the award watch list and more Red Raiders. Nick, surprise, surprise.
Yeah. Again, I did the math, or I guess it's not even math. It's just looking research. I did the basic research, and from what I've seen, the only list that they're not appearing on was the Ray Guy Award watch list, which was for punters, which there were 3 from the Big 12 that landed on there anyway. But again, you mentioned Red Raiders, they're everywhere. And the Big 12 has had its fair handful. Again, I don't want to make it seem like Texas Tech is the only one, but they are definitely the most prominent. Again, when you're on every watch list except the punter watch list, no disrespect to the punters out there, Texas Tech has had quite a fair share. They're just getting into their new rotation of them. But again, they're everywhere. And again, we mentioned Cam Dickey. It's been kind of the Cam Dickey show. You had a lot of defensive awards sprinkled in, now getting into the offensive awards. He's now up for the Maxwell Award, which goes to the overall best, the the offensive Walter Camp, which is the best overall player, and now just being announced today, he is up for the Doak Walker Award, which is to the nation's best running back. And so it seems like there's a lot of attention on Cam Dickey, which is very notable. If we go to this time last year, he was probably going to be running back 2 behind Quentin Joyner, and Joyner could very well take his place again at the top of the depth chart, but it seems like all eyes are on Dickey heading into this latest season.
Yeah, and you mentioned the watch list, and we certainly don't want to, leave anybody else off. L.J. Martin at BYU, certainly another running back that has garnered plenty of attention on these watch lists, and he's another guy that is up for the Doak Walker Award. I mean, we're not limiting it to the Texas Tech ones. That's just,
that's who's
who we're
on there.
covering.
Yeah.
Another one out of the Big 12 Conference, somebody that you'll see firsthand this season, right? Cam Cook from West Virginia, a Mountaineer running back that transferred in from Jacksonville State. Sorry, I had to say that very slow, where Rich Rod was before. We have a Jacksonville State former head coach, and we have a former Jackson State head coach in Deion Sanders. So it's easy to mix those up. Yeah, the Big 12 certainly has their fair share of good running backs, and but yeah, we just mentioned Cam Dickey just because he's more visible.
Yeah, he's more visible to us in Lubbock, and again, he's landing on watch list after watch list after watch list. And it was again like defensive. I mean, again, I've said it here covering our Lubbock media, but I feel like it even crept into Daily Dozen Sports. You look at a guy like A.J. Holmes Jr. that any watch list he's eligible for, he's on there. And I felt like every day the words A.J. Holmes and Jr. were leaving my mouth at some point in time. And so, again, a lot of the watch list. And you mentioned Cam Cook there with West Virginia. He has experience in the Big 12 as well. Of course, he was at Jacksonville State, but before that, he was at TCU. So looking to reclaim kind of his spot in the conference standings. But again, you had some other names on the Walter Camp Award list. I know Noah Fafita was on there. It was a lot of quarterbacks and a lot of running backs there out of the Big 12. But again, it seems like that could be a very strong point around the conference, is that running back position. And of course, we have the Biletnikoff coming out tomorrow on Wednesday. Not sure who maybe we'll see. I don't know if Texas Tech would be on there. I mean, you have contenders. Micah Hudson, maybe, question mark. I don't know if we've seen enough out of him.
I don't know if he's not done enough. I mean, he has like 16 career catches.
Exactly. He's just probably the one I think sticks out the most in Texas Tech, maybe just because of that. So maybe that's the one where we see the split. But you have, again, a lot of talent I think is brewing around the conference. It's just going to be, I think, can they make enough of an impact nationally? And you have Texas Tech and then the two teams talked about before, BYU and Utah, I think will have a lot to say about how many of these awards actually end up in the hands of Big 12 recipients. And then again, that'll kind of be what we talk about as we get closer. Again, preseason awards are going to keep rolling out. We'll keep you covered here on Daily Dozen Sports, but that's about all we have to talk about here today. West Virginia will carry your show tomorrow, but we'll be right back here in Lubbock on Thursday. Thanks so much for watching Daily Dozen Sports. We'll see you next time.